Welcome back, everybody. Today's deep dive is all about social and emotional intelligence.
Oh,
That's right, emotional intelligence.
EQ.
EQ, you got it.
I love it.
And specifically, how they can totally change the way you handle relationships.
Yeah.
Not only your personal relationships, but also how you handle kind of tricky situations.
Mm-hmm.
So get ready for some serious aha moments, folks.
Yeah.
Because we're diving deep into practical strategies for better communication.
Yes.
We're going to learn how to navigate conflicts like a pro.
Ooh, I like that.
And we're going to talk about how to build real, genuine connections.
Love it.
So
It's going to be good.
this is going to be great.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too.
You know, these skills are often seen as just like nice to haves,
Yeah,
but there's so much more than that.
totally.
They're really the bedrock of trust,
Okay.
teamwork, and handling conflict gracefully.
Okay, so you said they're the bedrock of trust and teamwork.
Yeah.
What makes you say that?
Well, think about it. Building trust with anyone, whether it's, your partner, your boss,
Yeah.
or even someone you just met,
Right.
relies on being able to understand and respond to their emotions.
Okay.
Same goes for teamwork. A team that can communicate effectively and handle disagreements,
Yeah.
constructively,
Right.
is a team that can achieve great things.
That makes total sense. And you know what?
Right.
Our source material actually had this awesome story that I think really illustrates this.
Yeah.
It talked about how someone used their emotional intelligence to totally turn around this really tough conversation
Oh, wow.
with a coworker.
Okay.
What stood out to you about that story?
I think what struck me was how the person in the story, instead of getting defensive,
Yeah.
actually focused on understanding their coworker's perspective.
Okay.
Like they used active listening,
Right.
really trying to understand what the other person was feeling and where they were coming from.
Yeah.
And guess what?
When?
It completely shifted the energy of the interaction.
It's amazing how powerful just listening can be.
It is.
That story, I think, really highlights the practical side of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
But let's be real, we all face those social challenges, those moments where we're like, ugh, I wish I had handled that differently.
All the time.
Right, all the time.
Yeah.
And our sources actually pointed out 3 common ones
Okay.
that I think a lot of people can relate to.
I'm sure.
So tell me what those are.
Absolutely. So miscommunication,
Okay.
conflict, and that feeling of emotional detachment where you just can't seem to connect with someone.
On an emotional level. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does emotional intelligence give us the tools to actually handle these better?
Good question.
Let's start with miscommunication. What can we do?
Well, with miscommunication, emotional intelligence helps us communicate more clearly and openly.
Okay.
It's about being aware of how we express ourselves.
Yeah.
And really paying attention to what others are saying, not just waiting for our turn to talk.
That reminds me of something our source material said about active listening.
Oh, yeah.
Try focusing on understanding, not just responding.
I love that.
That feels like a really simple
It is.
but profound shift.
It is. Active listening is about moving past just hearing words
Yeah.
and getting to the heart of what someone is trying to communicate,
Right.
including their emotions and the unspoken parts of their message.
Okay, what about conflict?
Conflict.
I think we all know how quickly things can spiral when emotions are running high.
Oh, yeah.
So
Big time.
what do we do?
In those moments,
Yeah.
emotional regulation becomes crucial.
Okay.
Emotional intelligence doesn't mean suppressing your emotions,
Right.
but it does give you the ability to stay calm, composed, and able to see the situation from the other person's point of view, even if you don't agree with them.
That sounds like a real superpower, especially in the heat of the moment.
It is.
So it's less about reacting
Yes.
and more about responding.
Thoughtfully.
Thought.
Yes.
Okay.
By understanding both our own emotions and those of others,
Yeah.
we can approach conflict with the goal of finding a solution, not just winning.
Now, this third challenge, emotional detachment,
Yeah.
is interesting to me because it's not always about negative emotions, is it?
Right.
Sometimes it's just about a lack of connection.
That's right. Emotional intelligence, especially empathy and self-awareness,
Okay.
helps you engage with others emotionally while maintaining healthy boundaries.
Okay.
It's about being present and attuned to their emotional needs without becoming overwhelmed or losing yourself in the process.
So we've talked about how emotional intelligence can help us handle these common challenges.
Yeah.
But before we dive into like specific strategies and stuff, how do we even know if we have blind spots in these areas?
That's a great question. Our sources gave a couple of really interesting examples.
Okay.
One is having difficulty picking up on nonverbal cues.
Oh, interesting.
You might miss those subtle facial expressions, body language shifts, or changes in tone that actually reveal a lot about how someone is feeling.
So it's not just about what people say, it's how they say it.
Precisely. Another blind spot is the tendency to jump into a defensive mode.
Okay.
Instead of actually trying to understand the other person's point of view, our natural instinct when we feel criticized is to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
But emotional intelligence helps us hit pause, listen, and try to see things from their side.
It's about shifting from that like knee-jerk reaction to a more like thoughtful, empathetic response.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
And recognizing these blind spots is the first step towards developing stronger social and emotional skills.
Totally.
It's about being open to feedback from yourself and others.
Okay.
And being willing to constantly learn and grow.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork.
Yes.
And we've identified potential blind spots.
We have.
Now for the exciting part.
I know, right?
What are some tangible things that listeners can do to actually boost their social and emotional skills?
I love that. It's time for the skill building power hour.
Let's go.
Let's kick things off with active listening.
Okay.
Which is really the foundation of strong communication.
Yes.
Our source emphasizes being fully present in conversations, paraphrasing to make sure you understand.
It's okay.
And asking clarifying questions.
And remember that fantastic tip. Try focusing on understanding, not just responding.
Yes. Such a small change in mindset, but it can make a huge difference.
It really can. It's about stepping outside your own head.
Yeah.
And truly engaging with what the other person is sharing.
Love it.
Up next is expressing ourselves clearly.
Okay.
That sounds straightforward, but I bet it's trickier than it seems.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's not just about getting the words out there.
Right.
It's about conveying your message in a way that's clear, respectful, and avoids blaming others.
Yeah.
Our source suggests using I statements to express your feelings. For example, instead of saying, "You're always late," try saying, "I feel stressed and anxious when we're running behind schedule."
So it's about owning your emotions.
Yes.
And expressing them without pointing fingers at someone else.
And don't forget about your nonverbal cues.
Oh, right.
Your tone of voice and body language need to be in sync with your words to avoid sending mixed messages.
Okay. We've covered active listening and clear expression. Now let's talk about building empathy.
Okay.
That seems like a tougher skill to develop.
It does require effort, but it's essential for building strong connections.
Absolutely.
Our source suggests pausing before responding to truly consider the other person's emotions.
Interesting.
Instead of jumping in with your own thoughts.
Right.
Take a moment to understand how they might be feeling.
That pause is so important, isn't it?
It is.
It creates space for understanding and empathy.
Absolutely. Another tip is to validate their feelings. You don't have to agree with them, but simply acknowledging their emotional experience can go a long way.
Yeah.
Something as simple as, "I can see why you feel that way," can be incredibly powerful.
We're on a roll. Next up is conflict resolution.
Ooh, good one.
What are some strategies to help us navigate disagreements better?
Our source highlighted 2 key tips. Focus on the issue, not the person.
Right.
And find common ground.
Okay.
For instance, instead of saying, "You never do the dishes," try saying, "It's important to me that we share household chores equally."
Oh, I like that.
It addresses the problem without attacking the person.
It keeps the focus on finding a solution.
Exactly.
Not on assigning blame.
And finding common ground, even in disagreements, can help build a bridge towards a resolution that works for everyone.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground. Active listening, expressing ourselves clearly, building empathy and resolving conflicts.
That's quite a toolkit.
It's a pretty powerful toolkit.
It is.
But there's one more key skill we should add. Emotional adaptability.
Oh, yes. Good one.
It's about being flexible and adjusting your communication style depending on the situation or the person you're interacting with.
Right.
So there's no one-size-fits-all approach to social interactions.
Exactly. What works with one person might not work with another.
Right.
Emotional adaptability helps you be more aware of the nuances of each interaction and respond in a way that's most effective.
This is a lot to take in.
It is.
But it's clear that developing social and emotional skills is an ongoing journey.
It is. It's a lifelong journey.
Speaking of journeys, before we wrap up part 1,
Yes.
I have a challenge for our listeners.
A challenge. I love it.
This week, I challenge each and every one of you to have at least one conversation where you consciously practice active listening.
Good one.
Put aside your own thoughts for a moment. Truly listen to the other person and see what happens.
Ooh, that's a good one.
You might be surprised by the results.
I love that it highlights how even small changes in our approach can have a big impact on our interactions.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear what our listeners discover. Welcome back to our deep dive into social and emotional intelligence.
I'm excited for this part.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw in the last part how powerful these skills can be for navigating those tricky social situations and building, those stronger relationships.
Yeah.
Now, this is the part I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah.
The connection between emotional intelligence and your own well-being.
Yes.
I've always kind of sensed like a link there between how we handle our emotions and our overall mental health. But what does the research actually say?
Well, one of the most interesting things our sources highlighted is the idea of emotional intelligence acting as a buffer against stress.
Oh, interesting.
So imagine being able to face challenging situations with more composure.
Okay.
Because you're better equipped to understand and manage those difficult emotions.
Instead of just like spiraling into anxiety or getting overwhelmed.
Exactly.
You can approach those challenges with more resilience.
That's exactly it. Emotional intelligence equips you with the tools to process emotions in a healthier way so they don't control your reactions and behaviors.
That makes sense.
Our sources even cited a study that found people with high emotional intelligence were significantly less likely to experience burnout in high-pressure work environments.
Oh, wow. So it can have a real impact.
It really can.
Our source material also specifically mentioned stress management.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a little more for me?
Of course, when you're stressed, your emotions can go haywire.
Oh, yeah.
Making it harder to think clearly and make rational decisions.
Makes sense.
Emotional intelligence helps you recognize those stress triggers. And develop coping mechanisms that actually work for you.
So it's about having a personalized toolkit of strategies to handle those like overwhelming feelings rather than letting them take over.
Exactly. Think about things like deep breathing exercises, mindfulness practices, or even just stepping back from a situation to gain some perspective. Emotional intelligence gives you the power to regain control and navigate those stressful periods without completely losing it.
It sounds like emotional intelligence is like a key ingredient in building resilience.
It is.
That ability to bounce back from setbacks.
Absolutely. Resilience is all about adapting and recovering from adversity. Emotional intelligence contributes to this by fostering a more optimistic outlook and a belief in your ability to overcome challenges. Instead of getting bogged down by negativity or feeling defeated, you can view these experiences as opportunities for growth.
It's about reframing those setbacks as stepping stones rather than roadblocks.
I love that.
Our source material also highlighted this connection between emotional intelligence and fostering a sense of overall well-being.
Yes.
So can you tell me more about that?
Well-being is multifaceted, encompassing your mental, emotional, and physical health. Emotional intelligence boosts well-being by promoting self-awareness, healthy relationships, and a sense of purpose.
So it's not just about managing those like negative emotions. It's also about cultivating those positive emotions and experiences that contribute to a richer, more fulfilling life.
I love that.
Oh, okay. So we talked about mental and emotional well-being.
Yes.
Do you think there's a connection with physical health as well?
It's a great question. And actually, research does suggest a link. When you're chronically stressed or emotionally overwhelmed, it can take a toll on your physical health. Think about the impact stress has on your sleep, your immune system, even your risk for certain health conditions.
It's almost like emotional intelligence has this ripple effect.
It does.
Impacting not only our mental and emotional health, but our physical well-being as well. So by managing stress and cultivating positive emotions, we're essentially creating a healthier environment for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Both internally and externally.
You've got it. Emotional intelligence empowers you to break free from the cycle of stress and negativity,
Right.
which can lead to improvements in all aspects of your health.
This all sounds great in theory, but what can our listeners actually do to put this knowledge into practice?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Our source material didn't provide specific steps,
Right.
but we can use what we've learned to brainstorm some actionable strategies.
Totally.
It all starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
Take some time to reflect on your own emotions, what triggers them, and how you typically respond.
Okay.
Things like journaling, mindfulness exercises, and even asking for feedback from people you trust can be incredibly helpful.
Once you have a better understanding of yourself, you can start to pinpoint areas where you might want to strengthen your emotional intelligence.
Maybe it's focusing on active listening to improve your communication skills, or developing healthy coping mechanisms to manage stress more effectively.
Or maybe it's about consciously practicing empathy and compassion in your interactions with others.
That's a great point. And remember, this is a continuous process, not a one-time fix.
Right.
There will be times when you slip up or fall back into old patterns.
Yeah, totally.
But that's okay. The important thing is to keep learning, keep practicing, and keep striving to be the best version of yourself.
This conversation has been so insightful.
It has.
I feel like I have a much deeper understanding of how important social and emotional skills are. Not just for our relationships, but for our overall well-being.
I agree.
What do you think our listeners should take away from this discussion?
I hope they feel inspired and empowered to embark on their own journeys of developing these essential skills. Remember, even small changes can lead to big shifts in your life.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in part 2 of our exploration into social and emotional intelligence.
We have.
But hold on tight.
Okay.
Because in part 3, we're tackling the big question: how do we actually apply all of this incredible knowledge to our everyday lives?
Get ready for some practical tips and actionable strategies that you can start using right away.
All right, welcome back to our final part of our deep dive.
I'm excited.
I know, right?
Let's do it.
We're going to be bridging the gap between, all this knowledge and how to actually apply it.
It's the actionable steps.
Actionable steps.
Love it.
So in part 1, we uncovered the power of EQ. And why it's so important. In part 2, we explored that link between emotional intelligence and well-being.
It's amazing. How it all connects.
Totally. And now in this final part, we're going to translate those concepts into practical strategies that you can use every day.
It's like we've gathered all the ingredients, and now we're ready to cook up a delicious recipe.
I like that analogy for boosting your EQ and applying it
to real-life situations.
Real-life situations, okay?
Pretty good.
So our source material didn't lay out a step-by-step plan.
It didn't, but it
did offer valuable insights that we can kind of weave together into a roadmap for our listeners.
Love it.
So where do we even begin? What is the first step on this EQ enhancement journey?
Well, as we discussed in part 2, self-awareness is the foundation. It's about understanding your own emotions, your triggers, and your typical patterns of behavior. Think of it as like taking a personal inventory of your emotional landscape.
Okay, so let's say someone's listening right now, and they're like, hey, I tend to shut down emotionally when I'm feeling overwhelmed. That's the next step.
That's a great example. Once you've identified a pattern, you can start to explore different ways of responding instead of shutting down. Maybe you try taking a few deep breaths, journaling about your feelings, or reaching out to a trusted friend for support.
So it's about finding healthier, more constructive ways to process those emotions.
Exactly.
Rather than letting them dictate your actions.
And that takes practice.
It does take practice. It's like learning any new skill.
It is. At first it might feel awkward or uncomfortable, but the more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
And that reminds me of something else that our source material highlighted. Try focusing on understanding, not just responding.
Such a good one.
It seems like shifting your mindset to focus on truly understanding others is like a game changer for communication.
You hit the nail on the head. Active listening is such a powerful tool for
Yes.
building understanding and empathy.
Absolutely.
It's about being fully present in conversations, paying attention to not just the words, but also the nonverbal cues,
Right.
and asking clarifying questions to make sure you're on the same page.
Right.
It can be a real challenge to quiet your own thoughts and just focus on listening,
Yeah.
but it's so worth it.
It is. Okay, so we covered self-awareness.
Yes.
We covered active listening.
Mm-hmm.
What other practical strategies can our listeners try?
Let's revisit the idea of expressing yourself clearly, but this time
Okay.
with an added layer of assertiveness.
Okay.
Remember those I statements we talked about in part 2?
Yes.
They're fantastic for communicating your feelings and needs in a way that's direct and respectful.
I remember that you gave like a really good example.
I did.
Can you remind us
Of course.
how to use I statements effectively?
Instead of saying, you never listen to me, an I statement would be, I feel unheard when I'm interrupted because it makes me feel like my thoughts aren't valued.
Right.
See how it shifts the focus?
Yeah.
From blaming the other person to expressing your own experience and needs.
It's so powerful.
It is.
It's less accusatory. It's more focused on finding a solution.
A solution.
And I imagine being mindful of your tone of voice.
Yes.
And body language is also important
Oh,
when
huge.
you're communicating.
Absolutely. Your nonverbal communication can either reinforce or contradict your words.
Right.
So make sure your tone and body language are aligned with the message you're trying to convey.
We tackled self-awareness.
Yes.
Active listening.
We did.
Expressing ourselves clearly. Now, what about those challenging situations like conflicts?
Conflict.
Do you have any
Yes.
tips for handling those gracefully?
Our source material gave some excellent advice
Okay.
for navigating conflict constructively. Remember the 2 key tips.
Yes.
Focusing on the issue,
Yeah.
not the person, and finding common ground.
I love those, but how do those play out in real life?
Yeah.
Can you give us an example?
Let's say you and your partner
Okay.
are disagreeing about how to spend your weekend.
Oh, yeah. Classic.
Instead of saying, you're always so selfish and inconsiderate,
Right, right.
try saying, it's important for me to have some downtime this weekend to recharge, and I was hoping we could find a way to do that together.
Okay.
It keeps the focus on finding a solution
Yeah.
that works for both of you.
That's a great example of depersonalizing the issue.
Right.
And finding that
That's right,
collaborative
focus.
approach.
What about finding common ground?
Oh, finding common ground.
How do we do that when we're like in the middle of a disagreement?
It's about looking for those areas of agreement.
Okay.
Even if they seem small at first.
Right.
Maybe you both agree that spending quality time together is important, or that you both want to have a relaxing weekend.
Right.
By acknowledging those shared values.
You can start to build a bridge toward a resolution.
This is all so helpful, but sometimes, even with the best intentions, I find myself falling back into old patterns.
Oh, yeah.
It's like my emotional autopilot takes over.
It happens.
Have you ever experienced that?
Oh, absolutely. It's completely normal to revert to familiar patterns.
Right.
Especially when you're stressed
Yeah.
or feeling overwhelmed.
Right.
The key is to be patient with yourself.
Okay.
Recognize those slip-ups.
Yeah.
And gently steer yourself back on course.
It's a journey,
It is.
not a destination.
Not a destination.
Every interaction is an opportunity
It is.
to practice
Yeah.
and refine your skills.
Love it.
Well, folks, we've reached the end of our deep dive into social and emotional intelligence.
Sad to see it go.
I know, me too. We explored those foundations of these skills, their incredible impact
Right.
on your relationships and well-being,
Absolutely.
and how to actually apply them
To your daily life.
in your daily life. So
Yeah.
I hope you've enjoyed this exploration.
Me too. It's been amazing.
And until next time, keep those minds and hearts open
Yes.
and keep diving deep.